All right, guys, welcome back to Transmit the 1075. It's been another week or so. I've been pretty busy running around, but I promised one of my listeners we would discuss the topic of top-mounted pumps. Actually, the last video I posted, I mentioned whether top-mounted pumps or side-mounted pumps were better, and it sparked so many comments below that I said, you know what, I think this falls under the what's better, a straight bore nozzle or a fog nozzle, or whether you should go on a single family peaked roof. The fire service definitely has its things where guys jump to one side or the other, and for whatever reason, this follows the same thing. I guess I should know firefighters well enough that it shouldn't be that surprised. So anyway, let's get into it. What is better, the side-mounted pump or the top-mounted pump? I'm going to just go on record and tell you that as I've said 100 times here before, I was a career firefighter, also a volunteer. In my volley house, we actually had side-mounted pumps and top-mounted pumps. And at my career firefighting days, the only thing we ever dealt with was side-mounted pumps. So I have a pretty good perspective because I've used both many a day. So let's get into it. So for starters, let's start off with price. Okay, so if you're just looking at dollar-wise, it is cheaper to have a side-mounted pump. So if you're a big department and you have 50 rigs or 100 rigs or whatever it is, side-mounted pump is going to save you some money. So I'd argue right there, side mount is ahead. Number two, the size of the apparatus, the length of the apparatus. So without question, for obvious reasons, if you've decided to put the pump on top, the length of the apparatus gets longer. They say 20 inches, 24 inches, maybe a little bit more. Maybe in a rural community or in suburbia, you don't think that matters, but you have a small firehouse, you have small streets. In my view, the smaller the rig is, the better. That goes for height, length, width, everything else. A smaller rig, you can wheel around, get in places when you have to. So, okay, we're two for side-mounted pump. But here's the nitty-gritty. I would argue for the next part, which is what I'm classifying as speed and agility, is the side-mounted pump wins. And what do I mean by that? So, in my firehouse, we had a 24-hour shift, 3 days off in between, but on every tour, we rotated. Obviously, the captain was always in the officer's spot, but as a firefighter, you were either the chauffeur, you were the nozzleman, or the irons, and you rotated around. And look, when there was a fire to be had, no one really wanted to be driving the rig. Although I would argue the first 10 minutes of any fire scene, your standard house fire, the chauffeur position, in my view, is just as exciting and probably the most important thing, because if you don't get water, the fire gets a lot worse and everyone's going to be looking back at you and saying, what the hell's going on? But there's a lot to be done. And in my view, if you don't think there's a lot to be done, maybe we just have a different perspective on what the chauffeur, what the engineer's responsibility. And so being nimble and being quick, the side-mounted pump is vastly better. And look, I was an athlete. I was a better than average athlete. I always scored in the upper 1% in the fire service fire testing. I took a bunch of department tests in New Jersey, FDNY. I got 100% on the physical in New York City. So I was agile. I was competent. I was a soccer player. I was a basketball player. I have some competency. And when you're running around the rig and going up and down on a top-mounted pump, I always thought it was a little dangerous. If it's raining out, if it's cold out, if it's snowing out, you're slipping and sliding. You can't do the things that you're supposed to be doing. And I don't think being a chauffeur is just putting the pump in gear and going up on top and pulling the discharge and getting the pump in gear. My idea of being a chauffeur is getting the first line in service. Okay, especially look, New York City. has a lot of manpower. They got guys doing every aspect of the job. But if you're in suburbia, if you're in rural areas, or even in city departments that are running, I knew Newark, New Jersey back in the day used to run with 3 guys on the rig. So if you have limited manpower, the chauffeur needs to do a lot. The chauffeur should be helping stretch the first line, making sure the hose is out of if you're doing a Matadale or pre-connect or whatever you want to call it, making sure it's out of the bed. Heaven forbid it's not out all the way. You charge it obviously gets slammed and doesn't work. Chasing kinks, super important. Just spreading the line out so that it's going to flow into the building properly. Getting a water supply, whatever that is. It could be off the front bumper to the hydrant. So you're during these aspects of the things I'm mentioning, you're running back and forth. You're doing one thing and then they're calling for water. You're running back. You could go up and down a couple times. It's not easy. And so being on the pump side, being on the ground on a side mounted pump is, in my view, vastly easier. So like I said, you're hitting the front suction if you happen to nose up against the hydrant. But we used to have a well underneath the pump panel on a side mount. You could stretch a 3-inch line to a hydrant. You could stretch off the back. There's multiple things any competent and capable chauffeur should be handling. And it's not something, like I said, where you're just getting up on top of the rig and doing your thing. And with a side-mounted pump, in my view, if you're an active chauffeur that's helping get that first line in surface, helping get that supply line secured immediately, a top-mounted pump is not for that mentality. It really isn't. In my view, that's a guy that's going on top and is going to sit there and smoke a cigarette and watch the show. Not the way I see things. What else? Also, one thing I forgot to mention is even throwing ladders. Again, I think some departments may say, "What are you kidding me? The chauffeur?" Yeah, I've been to fires where it's all career, where it's in an area where the first due local engine gets there first, but it's in an area of the town where other companies have a longer way and they're not getting there. The chauffeur has the potential to do lots of things, and climbing up on top of the rig isn't as easy for him to do those things. This is also another thing for rural communities, but in a brief period of time, I was from a career department, but sometimes our chiefs were coming from a long way. And so the chauffeur is even acting as incident commander because, again, if you're in a rural area, you know what I'm talking about. The captain goes inside the building, and now the chauffeur is trying to be a jack of all trades, get the rig, get everything going, as I mentioned, but also maybe give some communication inside. What's it looking like? Are we making any progress? Speaking to other units that are coming in for water supply, second due engines, first due truck, whatever it is. So I think being the chauffeur can be one of the most complicated and most important aspects of the job. And if the first due engine chauffeur does not know what he's doing and is not proactive, he and himself can, just like the nozzleman, control the efficiency and the effectiveness of how the fire goes. Anyway, that's what I got so far. Let's talk about safety. Okay, so there's 2 items that people always talk about why they love top-mounted pumps. First is view, and the second one is safety. So let's start with safety first. So, look, the apparatus positioning in this particular case is not what I would suggest you should do. It's fine. Maybe the cops have the road shut down already. Generally speaking, I would want to be assuming this car is going in the direction of what the traffic is flowing. And so maybe it isn't. Maybe it spun around and hit that. But let's assume it's going this direction. I would have the apparatus on this side. I understand sometimes smoke or gasoline flowing, or there's other conditions that can change those things. But generally speaking, I would have the apparatus on the side where the traffic is coming so that you can position it properly. But let's just pretend that That's been done here. Okay, they got the line in service. There's a guy jumping up, talking about how I always say you're jumping back and forth. But here it is. They're knocking the fire out. Obviously, now that I'm saying it, the traffic is flowing that direction. So we talk about safety, and I think this is a fallacy in my opinion. Now, look, don't get me wrong. You're on some side street in a development, and a car's going 5 miles an hour and hits the apparatus. Are you going to be fine here? Absolutely. I don't think that's a problem. But I know a bunch of companies that buy top-mounted pumps for exactly this. We cover the New Jersey Turnpike in my department. I know other companies that did as well. Some of those companies like to use top-mounted pumps because they think it's safer there. I don't think it's as safe as they're thinking. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, let's say this firefighter isn't there, and a car or worse yet, a tractor trailer or a dump truck of some vehicle of significance. In my view, I don't want to be on the top of the apparatus when this thing gets hit by a truck doing 50 miles an hour. Let's look at this as a different way. Let's look at it this way. Okay, here's a side-mounted pump. This is a great example of how I think the apparatus should be positioned on an emergency on a highway. Look, I think maybe you get a little bit closer so that no vehicle could sneak through. But if this is where the incident is, it's an accident, it's a car fire, whatever, it's a medical call, whatever it is, the pump is on this side. So in my view, I see this happen a lot, and I will say even in my own department, this procedure was not followed as much as it should. But in my view, you put the apparatus on an angle. Sometimes guys are a little afraid to close a lane because the police get pissed. But because the police are more concerned about keeping the road open than they are about keeping emergency responders safe on the sideline. And I understand it too if you're a cop. But anyway, put the apparatus like this. You're on the pump side is over here. I can see the incident. And yes, in the event that something horrific happens where a car hits it, it's a glancing blow and goes off. But if it's going to be something worse than that, I'd much prefer to be on the back side of this where the tractor trailer or car hits there. At least I have the opportunity of running away, jumping over the guardrail, over the Jersey barrier or whatever. Look, I understand every incident is different. There will never be a perfect scenario. This is probably the most dangerous thing most firefighters do across the country is forget the fires. It's these incidents. But in my personal opinion, the top-mounted pump is not a safety feature. It's fine. And again, for low-impact things, I think it's fine. But I'd rather be on the ground where I could run, dive underneath, go this direction, stand over here, do whatever it is, and theoretically be safer. Visibility. This is, I will concede, this is the best thing top-mounted pumps have to offer. You're the chauffeur, and now you're up here. You have the high ground, as they say, and I think Anakin told that to, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi told that to Anakin by the lava river that, he had the high ground, so you better, step aside. But he didn't listen. Anyway, so yes, you have the high ground. You have the visibility. You have a great angle. But at the end of the day, you're the chauffeur. And so I don't know what benefit this is ultimately giving to the outcome of the fire. And to me, the things I've mentioned so far, right, whether it be the length of the rig, the price of the rig, the ability to run around, I don't think the safety factor is there as much. And at this point, my view is after that 10 or 15 minutes of running around and doing all the things that you got to do, at this point, you're just a spectator watching. And yeah, it's awesome to be up there and look. But for that benefit, I don't see the value. And yeah, that's basically it. And here's the other thing I would say too is that, when it comes to, one thing I forgot to mention when it comes to the length of the apparatus is that, how many fires are we going to? how many times is having this angle of a benefit? So you're driving around this apparatus day after day after day for these 5 times a year, 10 times a year, 15 times a year. I don't know whether you're super busy, 20 times a year. So you have all these downsides for a very limited benefit. So look, guys, I'm sure I've insulted half the country, just like when I said about a nozzle, or just like I said about not cutting single family roofs. But it's not what I think. I want to know what you think. Tell me whether I nailed this. Tell me whether you think I'm missing something. Tell me why your top mounted pump is the greatest thing that you ever had. Share it in the comments, and let the guys learn and make the world a better place. Thank you so much for watching. Please look forward to my other videos. Please check out, I have a bunch of FDNY old school videos when I was in my 20s, buffing jobs in Crown Heights, FDNY in New York City. Check them out. Thanks for watching.
135, 135, 135, ready.